Well, I'm a pilot, a former financier, and a watch collector. So for me, the holy grail watch was the modern GMT Master with the Serichrome bezel. This was out of reach for a very long time, except that last year I got very lucky. Business took off at the end of the last year, where I started my own consulting firm and was in a position to finally step up and purchase what was for me the dream. But we'll get back to that in a bit. I started collecting watches pretty much freshman, sophomore year of college, when I first started working as a pilot. And my first real paycheck from the job, I bought myself a Speedmaster and 1863. And that was when the bug kind of bit me. Started from there. It was a little sporadic. You know, you wanted a dive watch, you wanted a pilot's watch, you wanted a dress watch. And kind of as I started collecting those, I came to realize that what I really liked was GMTs. Dual time zone, 24-hour watches that really started to speak to me and speak to sort of the career path I was going down. So what I needed then was a simple, easy way to read time between the multiple offices I worked in. So with that in mind, the first one I bought was not a tool watch, not a dress watch, but something that really truly was meant to kind of bridge that gap. So the first GMT that I bought to kind of fulfill that purpose was this Nomos Tango Mat, which suited those needs perfectly. You know, it's clearly not a tool watch. Not really small, slim enough to be a dress watch, but was very much a work watch, at least a work watch if you wear a suit. And it's not really a true GMT in the sense that it doesn't have a 24-hour dial or a 24-hour hand, but it has a sort of digital or digit display of a 24-hour clock set to whatever time zone you want. And this watch was with me through most of my travels during my finance career, because it was so easy to bring everywhere, so easy to set, and I never had to worry about it being ostentatious or understated. It was just there, and because of that, it was the perfect watch. After that, and funnily enough, probably wearing the Nomos while in Shanghai for work, I started to get the itch for a Pepsi, an early Pepsi, which is funny because most of, or the early parts of my collecting career here, I hated the two-tone Pepsi, but I guess it was the right time, and I found an earlier transitional GMT, and it spoke to me. You know, it had the nice faded bezel, original hands, a matte dial, the old plastic crystal. So it had this warm, wonderful feeling, and then on top of that, to me it was in many ways the pinnacle of the original GMT Master, because it had the quick set date. So you could easily change the date without having to spin the hours around. But in some ways it was beautiful because you were constantly turning the GMT dial, and it was never really settled. It never felt settled. It felt like a living watch that would kind of move with you and where you went. Kind of what ended up speaking to me about the Master, and then ultimately the Master 2, is this was in many ways the original pilot's watch for modern pilots, right? Invented for Pan Am and their international pilots. They needed a watch to display multiple time zones at once. They needed a watch that followed GMT or Zulu time, Greenwich Mean Time, versus just whatever time you were in. And they created the GMT Master. Following that, I felt the need for another two-tone, and one that could get a little more of a beating on my travels. One that, on a layover, if I wanted to go diving or swimming, I didn't have to worry too much about. And that's where the Tudor GMT came in. And this one was just around the time Tudor introduced their in-house movements for these new watches. And it had the aluminum bezel that would ultimately fade. It had the lack of crown guards, which made it feel elegant. The chronometer still was certified water resistant and waterproof down to whatever it is, deep enough for my needs. And also didn't have the Cyclops. But to me, it was a much cleaner look. While it was still harking back to some of the original GMTs made by Rolex, it stood on its own, and it stood very well on its own. I saw it, I picked it up, and this has been with me for a while now too. My most recent acquisition was, for me, it was the Holy Grail, which was a modern GMT Master 2 that I could put my own personal stamp on. In some ways, I'm somewhat sad that the new ones won't age the same way the old ones will. This will age with me in a way that no other watch, old or new, would, because it's mine. The bezel is in some ways perfected in the movement. The watch itself obviously runs better than it would otherwise, and the alloy that Rolex is using on the new Master 2s is almost virtually scratch resistant, so it really is going to be my mistakes that make this my own. For me, it's special to hold in many ways what is the culmination of the history of the GMT Master and the Master 2, and wear it almost daily. On the Jubilee bracelet, it's also quite special because it goes just that bit further from being a true tool watch to something that really speaks to the modern pilot, the modern way of life. One of the things I really love about GMT watches, and to me, what makes them special and different, is not just the time they tell, and not the fact that you can see 2 time zones at once, but rather the 24-hour dial is, to me, something that truly epitomizes the keeping of time. To have the hand that sweeps across the entire dial once a day is a really beautiful thing, because now you have one hand that goes around on the second, another that goes around on the minute, another one that goes around every 12 hours, and then finally one that kind of completes the day. And to me, it's all the ways one can keep time in one single watch, in one complication. And that's, to me, what makes a true GMT special and sought after.